all students, if you consider the students we have at MCBC, would all students learn, respond, or interact with what you guys would have prepared in the book look took exercise? Most?
So people come from a classroom background.
Okay.
So that's what they do in classrooms.
They're not necessarily not very effective though.
Right.
A lot of boys aren't very good now, given the type of class curriculum that.
That's good. Yeah. That's why you don't figure them out.
I got a bone stuck.
Really?
No, it's funny talking about
Don't talk if you gotta talk.
Don't talk.
That happened to me with a Pringle.
No, it's the thing that a lot of apparently like a lot of boys nowadays don't the type of class how classes are run in elementary schools, like boys apparently aren't as very effective.
Right. Boys not.
They need to move.
Because they need more action oriented and stuff.
Learn more
So it's not just studies.
kinesthetically.
Yeah. Okay, so if the students that would learn well in our classrooms right now, the way we teach right now, why do they learn best? Why is it that they learn better than other ones? Or in the case of what Henry said, why do girls learn better in a classroom setting than boys? Tailored more?
Yeah, well, the way that traditional classrooms are set up is tailored more for girls to excel
Okay.
than for boys. I think.
Really?
Conspiracy. So you think it was a purpose?
But in the original, girls weren't even allowed to go to school.
Yeah, but
Just
yeah, and so once girls were allowed,
I don't think
they
changed their
they
format.
thrived.
Throw.
Well, so how was before girls went?
Well, also before it used to be boys and girls were separated originally. Well, and then girls didn't go to school actually,
Yeah.
right? And then so eventually, now that girls are allowed to go to school, it's like you see them they're thriving more.
Right.
Usually the grades for girls in school in elementary and high school are much higher than guys.
But what I mean is, before girls went to school, was the format of the classroom that was different for boys?
Yeah, but then back then you didn't have any comparison with girls, right? It was just
No, what I mean is, you said that today's classrooms that we follow now were created to cater more for girls.
none of they were catered for girls, just that they just seemed somehow are more effective.
Okay.
Yeah, they weren't geared for girls. It's
Okay.
Okay, yeah, that's what we were trying to figure out. Cool. Question number 4. How would you teach someone how to count? How would you teach someone how to count?
Visually.
Okay, expand.
Use their fingers.
Yeah, fingers,
Okay.
blocks or whatever.
Okay, what else? How else could you teach somebody to count?
Barney.
What do you mean by
Balls, just do this for.
Okay, so singing, okay.
Oh yeah.
What else?
If you're really bored at counting, you could make a game out of it, or like I don't know. Let's say they like basketball, so
Yeah.
you bring the basketball and you shoot, and I guess one,
Right.
and you score 2.
Good. Awesome. What'd you say, Brian?
Yeah, with the object on.
Okay. Tricky?
I think you should, when it starts young, you should just display the numbers.
Okay, so like, immerse them in presence, okay.
Bake cookies and then tell me how many there are. Then you can
That's
number them.
subtracting.
Okay,
That's second lesson.
You can no.
Repeat it to them all.
If you can get this number, then I'll give you another one. And then if you can tell me how
Bribery.
many that was, that's what I mean.
Every wrong number, I will eat one. If you get all of them wrong, you're not getting any. All right. So there's many ways, right, to teach counting. It's not just like showing them, okay, 1 + 1 is equal to 2, but you can have song, you can have an exercise. You could have like showing with visual tool, means, mediums, whatever. So there's many ways to teach. Usually there's many ways to teach the exact same thing, right? I think one of the reasons why our Sunday schools are only effective with one kind of student is because we only teach one way, which sort of makes sense. And what I mean by it makes sense that only one kind of student or one kind of student population is reached at. Because we don't have a variety of ways to teach. Yeah?
So what type of students you're talking about that are learning more compared to what kind of group that you don't think they're learning as much?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, yeah, that's what we're going into. Yeah, totally. Close this.
Because I mean, we're set up maybe like most of the population is our students, which are intellectuals, right? So they would.
Is it?
I think so.
Yeah.
I seriously think so. Like we always like a lot of people don't they shy away from that question, but I definitely think that it's central to where our church is located and.
Well, this is for the adult class, I think. But when you look at a high school, it may be different.
True, but
Oh.
let's say the majority still is.
No, I think, yeah, sorry. I think, however, best way you learn when you're young, there's no reason why it should change when you're an adult, right? What I mean is that, we'll talk about it, there's something called multiple intelligence. There's multiple ways to be intelligent. I think in our church setting, I think the church traditionally, we've always been about, not traditionally, I'm wrong, sorry. The evangelical church, we've been really good at teaching stuff theologically just by words and preachers and reading and writing. But you look at the early church, look at Jesus teaching about the Last Supper. There's a lot of action there. A lot of displays, a lot of tactile, a lot of sensory. Food, right? He didn't talk much actually, right? He didn't talk much. Most of the thing was all sensory, was all actions, was all you get involved in the teaching. You look at the early church, a lot of it is, hey, you want to learn? Let's have a meal together and talk. Let me show you my life. Let me display my life. You look at services. Services used to have no sermons. Services used to be just communion, and that's the service, and you have songs. The evangelical church, we have many intellectuals, we think, because that's the way church is built up right now. So I think, to answer Johnny's question, right now we have a lot of people who we reach. One of the intelligence that we're going to look at is linguistic. We reach them with words, with sentences, with text. But a lot of the ones who are, a lot of the people who are more musical, a lot of people who are more kinetic, the people who are intrapersonal, those ones we lose. And there's a lot of those. There's a lot of those people around. After we look at the class, we actually have an exercise for you guys to go and to look at your class or your fellowship and say, okay, who do you think have, kind of map the different intelligence in your class or your fellowship group? But that will come after we go through the theory part. So having said that, I think oftentimes I think we blame students for not understanding, or we blame students because they're distracted, or we blame students because they don't want to listen, or we blame students because they're not engaged. But I think we rarely actually look at the teacher and question the way we teach or the way we do things, right? Because I think if the focus is on the teacher, the one teaching, then if something goes wrong, then the problem should be the student, the problem should be the teacher, right? So if you have a very non-responsive class, the teacher has to share the load or has to be aware that, okay, maybe it's me. Maybe it's the way I teach, right? Because a danger that we have as Bible teacher, because we're teachers, then we say, well, since I'm a Bible teacher, then I'm going to take for granted that maybe I'm not, teaching in an appropriate way or teaching in the best way. We take it for granted, right? That's sort of the danger that a lot of teachers have. We have to realize as Christian teachers, as teachers, period, that there's more than one way or more than one specific way to carry out a message. There's more than one way to do it. It's not, teaching the Bible isn't a formula. But I feel like that in the church, we often do it as a formula, right? We say, well, it's always been taught this way. 3:16 has always been, or the story of Jesus has always been taught through a movie back in the days, right? Nowadays, people don't even think about using a movie to teach about Jesus because that's in the past. That was different. At the core of class interaction, as we look at this topic this afternoon, I want us to realize one thing. And what I want us to realize is that God created each person differently. And if God created each person differently, it means they also learn differently, right? The uniqueness of each student reflects God's creative genius, right? If God really is reflected in all of mankind, then we cannot dare say that one human reflects all of God. All of us together, we reflect God's glory. We all possess different aspects of God. And so because of that, I think we relate, we understand things, we view things, we perceive things differently. So that's where the concept of multiple intelligence comes from. Multiple intelligence is a theory that was developed in the early 80s. And it was developed by a psychologist named Howard Gardner. And he suggested, or he dared challenge the educator of that time, saying that traditionally we defined intelligence too narrowly. They said that intelligence was only shown one way, was only achieved one way, was only taught one way. You could only solve problems one way. You could only acquire knowledge one way. And so Gardner came and he kind of says, this is wrong. I mean, this can't be true. There's got to be more than one way to be intelligent. There's more than one way to quantify intelligence. So he was responding to the whole IQ movement. What's your IQ? What's your IQ? That's not the only way to measure somebody's intelligence. So he came up with multiple intelligences. And so he said that there was a variety of ways in which it could be expressed. And so I'm hoping that knowing these different intelligence, that will help us create interaction. Because oftentimes we'll create interaction still for the same kind of intelligence, which is good because you're creating a variety, but you're still only aiming at or honing down or homing on one kind of student. And so we're spending so much energy thinking about so many ways to reach out this kind of intelligence, whereas we're neglecting all the rest of the other intelligence. So hopefully looking at those intelligence will help us. And thinking of different ways, or thinking of a variety of things or interaction is not only to make things more fun, or it's not only to make things go faster, but it's meant to help everybody grow. All right. So there's 8 intelligences, 8 MI. John, can you read that on your handout, page 1, starting with linguistic?
Linguistic,
Yeah.
logical, mathematical, spatial, bodily, kinesthetic, musical, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and naturalist.
Cool. So there's a lot to say about each, but we'll try to go through it. I'll try to go through it, just keeping to the essential. For the linguistic are those who have the capacity to use words, blank number 1. Blank number 2, syntax. Blank number 3, language. So those who are able to use words, syntax, and language effectively, whether orally or in writing. So right off the bat, words, syntax, language. So right off the bat, you look at this and you can say, okay, most probably half the people in our congregation do not fit this. There's a reason why kids have trouble writing essays, because they're not wired that way, right? I'm sure if we could find another way to help them express the same thing using another intelligence, they would do amazingly well. And so I think that's that's an example, or one of the ways that we can see linguistic intelligence not being everywhere. But you look at a sermon. A sermon is traditionally is what? A sermon is a guy going up, and what does he do? He just talks. That's all he does. So imagine the guy who's not linguistic and sits through an hour and a half sermon. It's an utter huge waste of time for that person. I understand there's a tradition of preaching and orally addressing people in the Bible, but that's not the only thing the preachers and the teachers did back then, right? And so already, I think as a church, sometimes we already shoot ourselves in the foot by only using one intelligence or addressing one intelligence. Stop me if you have any questions. Logical, mathematical. That's another one that we also take hugely for granted, and maybe because we're a Chinese church, I'm not sure. But that's the ability to quickly process information and easily being able to easily relate to different piece of data. Different piece of data to support a whole. Different pieces, yeah. Different different pieces. Yeah, I just noticed as I was. Don't make fun of me. Different pieces of data, and so that uses a lot of the logical intelligence, right? And so it's good and bad, right? It's really good if you're a logical mathematical and you want to learn about, I don't know, you want to learn about how the temple was built, or you want to learn about curses that God gave, right? Okay, these are the data, like they did these bad things and God just bam, brought down judgment. It's logical, right? There's like effect, there's a cause and effect.
It's like an if-then clause.
Yeah, sort of, right?
So you can draw like a flow chart in Visio or something. And
Right. I mean, I'm sure like for a lot of people who are really rational and like these things, you could, and they're not linguistic, you could grab all these geeks and put them together and say, okay, this is the story of the gospel in a flow chart. And they'd be like, oh, that makes so much sense. But if you sit them down and talk about it, they'd be like, what the crap are you talking about, right?
The unknown variable is always God's grace.
Or the infinite loop is always God's grace. You always go back to the grace, right? So yeah.
I don't want to jump ahead, but does that mean maybe you're getting to the point that we should maybe round up people of the same type of learning into classes instead of like letting them?
No.
People might have different combinations.
Yeah, because the reality is that everybody has the 8. We all have the 8. But some are just more natural, some are just more prominent than others. No, but they'll have some sort of weird logic. So for example, me and Sharon will be talking about stuff, and then like I'll say stuff, and then she's like, it doesn't make sense at all. But to me, it makes some sort of logic because of the way I'm wired, right? And it happens a lot.
I trust BC more because he's a programmer.
Could it be that this guy, Howard Gardner, made these up because he was jealous of his accurate logical?
It might be, right? It might be. Yeah, he was just not logical and not linguistic, and then he was like, you know what? I'm going to hire somebody to write a book about what I think about. I'll just sing this book and you guys write it down. I don't know. Yeah. So that's the second one. The third one, spatial, right? Spatial intelligence. That's the capacity to perceive visual spatial medium. So like stuff like a green, like a purple dinosaur that teaches how to sing. That's great for kids, right? Because they see it and they see him moving and they're like, okay, that makes sense. Like, or using visual to count, using your fingers. Some kids, you can just say 1, 2, 3, and they'll say it. And some kids, you say 1, 2, and it doesn't mean they're more dumb. It just means they learn differently, right? It just means they need some sort of visual,
Color spatial.
right? Color spatial.
I'll show you a figure.
Spatial intelligent people are also mediavore. So a lot of our kids are mediavore. They need media to learn stuff. If you don't have anything visual, they will not get it, right? Even if it's like something very basic visually, it would still help them so much. Right?
Yeah, like if you tell me to go to this place, you just turn left
Yeah, she
here
can, yeah.
and turn right there. I'm like,
Whereas for me, if you tell me, okay, this is how you get there, and you just tell me, and then I'll be able to do it. But like she needs like a drawing and like a map, and she needs like,
Say it like,
Someone hold your hand.
that's when you get the other.
Across the street. Siri helps.
Page 2. Spatial intelligence is also sensitive to color, sensitive to line, sensitive to shape, sensitive to form, sensitive to space. They're the people who, they need to be in contact, or they need to be aware of all the physical stuff around them, right? That's why a lot of the kids now, they need to doodle, right? I realize some of the kids, you teach them and they're like blah, blah, blah. They're like writing their own stuff, or they're like doodling around. You're like, are you listening? And they're like, yeah. And they really are. They need that sort of,
Outlet.
yeah. So that's another thing. That's it. That's another intelligence.
What did you mean by space?
Space. Example, if you teach about the temple of God, right? Or you teach about what Solomon did with the temple. Linguistically, you can say like, all right, like this is how it was built, this is the measurements, but like, let's say you take these kids and you say, okay, let's
Go to
let's,
Israel.
or yeah, either that, like be in that space, be in that geography, or you use like visuals. You say, okay, let's use this table as a wall, and so we'll put it here, and you just scale everything down just to give them an idea of the grandeur, right? Because the idea of the temple was that it was something huge, right? Where God, it was so huge and yet could still not hold down God. Like God was bigger than the big area. So that's the idea, right? If you can show it through space, these kids will be like, whoa, God is big. Or if you take them, let's say, to the oratory, and you bring them to the top of the oratory, where like the dome is like, I don't know how many like feet above that space, right? Those are kids who are going to respond to those kind of cues.
I'm wondering if these MIs apply to the material you are learning, or as well as the environment in which you are learning.
Yeah, so the material that we use, a lot of it is written linguistically, mathematical. So I think you need, as a teacher, to understand and learn yourself, and then what you teach back, then you add these things. So it could be in the material, but I think it's also some of it, or a lot of it maybe, is the environment as well. Yeah, for sure.
Especially in the next one.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. There's a lot of bodily kinesthetic that we could do in what we already have, the environment we have here. We just don't do it. Teaching to count, we don't need a basketball court to teach to count to somebody who's bodily kinesthetic. You say, do push-ups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many can you do? How many can you do? If we add those two, then how many is that? Can you guys do that many push-ups? No, you need 2 people. What if we wanted to do it with 3 people? How many push-ups do you each need to do to achieve that same number? I mean, the environment is not super important. It's really how, I mean, it is important, and it helps. I mean, if we had a gym, then imagine all those boys. They would learn so much more stuff.
Yeah. But if you look at it, if you look at the difference between the kids who are here and the kids who are in Hong Kong,
Yeah.
right? A lot of these things, I don't know if it's trained or it's social.
Nurtured or, yeah.
It's cultural too.
Yeah.
It's cultural, like, because if you bring a child from Hong Kong and come to study here, right? He's gonna go back to, sitting in front of a book for 8 hours.
Yeah.
Versus if you bring a child from here and make him study in Hong Kong, he's gonna fail right away.
Right. Agreed.
So
Yeah. I think a lot of it, it's definitely nature, the 8 intelligence. What is nurtured is how well you cope with your weaknesses in that intelligence.
So like,
Meaning,
it's always up to the teacher to be able to like distinguish.
yeah. Because at the same time, yes, kids in Hong Kong will do better here. But I'm wondering, is it are they? How to say?
Depends on what they're learning too.
Yeah,
Are
are
we
they?
talking about math class? Okay. Are we talking about
Gym class?
gym class?
Yes.
Unless it's a birdie.
Hong Kong kids are pretty good at basketball.
Huh?
Hong Kong kids are really good at basketball and soccer.
Yeah.
And soccer.
Or the interpersonal
Yeah.
things that you learn.
Yeah, so yeah, okay.
Communication, express them,
Ah, gotcha.
create ideas.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much more cultural as it is how a education system is set up, right? And at the same time, you have to wonder in terms of stress, right? The kids over there are way stressed. When I talk to my Korean friends and they say the police will drive you to your exam if you're late, that just shows how much pressure there are on those kids, And I don't think it's the best way for these kids to learn.
Whereas here you cannot fail.
Yeah, right? So yeah, it's,
Zero, he gets fired.
yeah.
That's happening in Calgary, yeah.
Yeah.
So in Alberta.
Yeah, you're not allowed to fail people here anymore.
You didn't know that?
Yeah, but that's another topic. No, F is for formidable. I don't know.
Fantastic.
Cool. Good question, though. Good question. Next one, bodily kinesthetic. This is a very misunderstood one. Oftentimes we'll say, especially with kids, we'll say, "Oh, let's have games, right?" Because it tires them, and then and then they'll be quiet for the class, and they won't move around because you burn all the energy. That's a bunch of crap. Moving around for some kids is actually a way of learning, right? So blank number 6, learning through moving or doing. Learning through moving or doing. Because for some of these bodily kinesthetic intelligent girls as well, movement are letters, right? And moving around is like reading, right? The bodily kinesthetic people they make use of the body to express ideas and feelings. So we got to be grateful for shows like So You Think You Can Dance and all those dancing shows, because it's a fresh take on how do you express yourself. right? Instead of just like some very like deep drama or like, you know,
To be or not.
or like, yeah, right?
That's moving too.
To zombie or not. To be or not.
To zombie or not zombie.
Shakespeare in the Park.
Bodily kinesthetic people will be very keen or very good at manipulating or handling objects or props, right? So they will need something that they can touch and move around and stuff like that, right? So kids who do that in class, right? It's like they are less distracted doing that than sitting still, which is very interesting, right? Which is hugely interesting. Or people that shake their, yeah, Brian. Brian is a Brian.
Still sitting, Brian?
Yeah, I'm very impressed. Well, he actually did stand up before.
I had to go pee.
No, but you used to cannot sit still. You usually walk around.
Same thing with Dennis. Dennis cannot sit still. Dennis needs to move. Yeah. Sorry.
Those are regulating behaviors, like coping behaviors, like kids with autism.
Coping
too,
behaviors.
No, but yeah, we're talking about regular people.
Okay, yeah. I mean like chewing on gum or biting.
Not regular. Sorry, that's a bad word. But
Or like chewing on gum or biting on your pen and stuff.
I'm a
That's like all
huge,
regular
I'm a
stuff.
huge pencil biter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just a bad habit.
Yeah, maybe. Might be.
But it's a reflection
Or
of
habit.
something else.
Yeah.
Or, you know,
Yeah.
he needs something
To
sensory.
eat. He needs to eat or something.
Huh? So what?
You're hungry.
I mean, I'm hungry. Maybe, who knows? Bodily kinesthetic, they will have a need for sensory stimulation to assimilate meaning and knowledge. So I'm pretty sure, like, I'm pretty convinced that most of the disciples were how do you say ADD? ADHD, right? Because like Jesus was always on the move. It's like, oh, let's go, guys, let's go. Oh, you guys go on the boat first. Or like, you guys like take these fish and like, distribute them. Like, Jesus was always keeping them busy, right? I mean, like you have a fisherman like in the boat, like he's gonna be always moving around. Tax collector will always be going around and bugging people and giving money and stuff like that. So like some way, like I'm pretty sure the disciples like had some sort of like, in today's world, learning disability, but they really didn't. It's just because Jesus understood that they were wired differently, right?
But also, Jesus only had 3 years to do his ministry.
Also, he had to go fast. True.
He was able to select his disciples.
He was. We're not. That's true.
You're not chosen. I'm gonna choose. I don't know.
Cool.
No, but yeah, totally. You're
Musical intelligence. That's really neat too. So it's a means of thinking. Music is a means of thinking, right? A means of perceiving, a means of discriminating or discerning. Maybe that's a better word. Transforming, a means of expressing knowledge through musical form. That's what musical intelligence will be to these people. Musical intelligence will be people who are able to write down thoughts into song or to a beat or to a song. An example, working in the Jamaican community in Toronto, a lot of these kids, they are deemed or they are judged having learning disability. They can't read, they can't write. These kids, they can't use words, they can't learn vocab. Have somebody beatbox and see how clear their thoughts are to that beat, to that beat. See the kind of words they use. See the kind of gymnastic they do with the syntax. It's amazing. And that's just because there was a beat, there was some sort of music to it. But ask them to sit down in a class and look at a book and write down with a pen, there's no way they're doing it. There's no way. I had like 17 years old. It took like an hour to write one sentence. One sentence, and that sentence was like less than 10 words. Yeah, most of them would be able to freestyle. Yeah, but the thing is that with a lot of them, even though they freestyle badly, they'll still be able to produce so much more than if they just wrote. That's the thing, right? So I think how good or how well you do it is your natural gifting, but it's also how much you've practiced your gift, right? Because if they're able to do it naturally, that just means like they just need to practice more and they'll be able to do it really well, right?
Sometimes I wonder though, is it also part of the cultural thing again? Because
True.
it's so uncool
To
to
not,
sit in
yeah.
the classroom and write,
Maybe.
and they just haven't had the practice it because they don't like to do it. But then it's cooler to beatbox and freestyle,
Maybe.
so then it comes out.
Chinese people
Because
can't rap.
Because
Well,
it's like,
subsections.
like that,
Gym.
when we're reading that economics thing, it's
Yeah.
all types of culture,
Yeah, that
every
we
type
type-
of schools,
Mhm.
they all score roughly the same.
Yeah.
In terms of reading, writing, blah, blah, blah. So it's not like an intelligence
Chinese.
capacity. It could also be what they are comfortable with.
But I'm wondering if but I'm wondering if what they're comfortable with is because that's their natural tendency, right?
Yeah, but it can't be that all of those kids.
No, I'm not saying all of them, right?
Are not able
Yeah.
to write a sentence.
Yeah, I'm not saying all those kids, but for a lot of those kids, right? At least, yeah. Those who are musically intelligent will also, music will make words or messages relatable. That's blank number 10. Words or messages relatable. That's why, like, as a preacher, I'm confident that I can preach for like half an hour on God's love. And I can have like any of you guys lead a worship song for 2 minutes and they'll get it more than if I preached. Because music will convey that in a way that preaching might not. Right? Well, that's the whole thing, right? Why did the evangelical church or since the Reformation, well, there's a reason why, obviously, but like, you know, you look at the services back in the days, there was no sermon. It's only after Reformation to fill a need of teaching proper doctrine because they felt there was a lack. Yeah, thanks a lot, Luther and Calvin, for making our services longer than they need to. Right? So music makes word messages relatable. Blank number 11. Music makes word messages memorable. Not only is it relatable, but it's also memorable. So Barney singing songs, man, it kills us as adults. But for kids, man, like they remember that stuff.
I still remember.
Yeah, like this. I mean, I honestly, and I'll be honest, and this is taped, I cannot give you the names of the book by order.
But there's a song for that.
But there's a song for it, but I've never learned it, so I'm doomed. But she does.
But I know all the Steve Green songs still.
What's that?
He used to sing Bible verses.
Oh, is it? So you remember those Bible verses?
You mean Seth?
Steve Green.
Seth Green.
No, I
That's
don't.
not very
Don't
good.
worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow we'll worry about it's a
I heard it.
Wow, that's awesome.
air.
So yeah, thank you. So music makes things memorable, right? I still remember the Barney song, but I don't remember anything else of Barney. But the song I do, right? So for example, right, we stress so much about learning about Psalms and Proverbs and those ones. Why don't we actually teach them singing? I mean, songs are songs. I think we would memorize them. I mean, like
We should have done your song class, like make up a tune.
yeah, I just
Choose
started
a
rapping,
song and like make up a tune for it.
Yeah.
Or rap it.
right?
I made up a rap.
Like one of the things that I really appreciated with and I'm not trying to make a generalization, but working with the Jamaican church, a lot of the older folks, they just have one tune, but they use it for every single passage. And then they remember every single passage because they keep singing that tune to every single passage. And they just memorize like that. Right? And those are people usually that never went to school. Never went to school, but they memorized so much through one song or one tune.
Find a way to translate the Bible into mathematics.
And then all Chinese people.
John plus Matthew equals
Repeat.
Cool.
derivative of Jesus' love.
The limit of grace is this. Whoa.
Where is it?
Cool. So the other intelligence is interpersonal. Those are social learners, okay? They learn in groups, and they need to learn in groups, right? So you could say that you're extroverts, although everybody has a side of extrovert and introvert, but I mean, those are stronger extrovert. The interpersonal intelligent people will be those who respond when teaching involves relationship, when it involves human contact. So Dickie talked about before, talking about love, have somebody come and share their testimony. That's what it is, relationship. They learn a lot more by somebody sharing their testimony than any of us teaching them about love for an hour, right? For example, PG did something really, really cool last year. They, to learn about sacrifice, they invited a war veteran and asked him, what does sacrifice mean to you as a Canadian who went to war during Second World War, to sacrifice for your country? And it was an amazing time. I mean, we could have had a wonderful Bible study. But then we said, what if we invited a war veteran? Somebody who knows what it is, who's experienced it in ways we haven't. And good thing that guy was a Christian as well, so he was able to relate it, which is even better, right?
How'd they find them?
I told Jamie to contact they always have those offices, veterans, how do you call that? No. Yeah, those guys, but they're all stationed, like they also have, yeah, exactly, thank you. Yeah, the Legions.
Royal Canadian Legion.
Yeah, I told him like look for the Legion in the church neighborhood, and so he came with his wife, and he stayed with us for a whole evening. It was really cool. Yeah, like a real flesh and bone like veteran. That's no, as opposed to like those who are dead and we just read biographies, right? That's what I meant. I've never seen that, man. What you buy your toys? See you, Johnny. Cool. Interpersonal, intelligent people are people that love group sharing, right? They love group sharing. Like they can't wait for times when they can share in groups, because they like to either share or learn from others, right? Interpersonal, intelligent people are people who are able to discern blank 13 mood, discern intentions, discern motivations, and discern feelings of others, of other people, right? So imagine you have somebody like that in your Sunday school class, and you want to teach like a Bible passage or a Bible narrative about Jesus meeting somebody or saving somebody's life. If you have somebody who has high interpersonal intelligence, you can use that person to understand or to explain how would Lazarus' sister feel when Lazarus was raised to life. Sorry. Zombies. Or like Jesus wept, the passage we had, right? Somebody who's like logical, mathematical. Jesus wept. Okay, he was sad, so he wept. Bingo. For somebody who's interpersonal, they will go deep. They will dig deep into the humanity of Jesus. And from that we can learn, Jesus was definitely one of us. Jesus was our family. He was one of us, and we are his family. So I think different intelligence will increase the learning or increase the change, the transformation in people's lives so much more, right? I think so much of the Bible, because it is a different time, different context, different culture. If you have somebody who's able to put themselves in the shoes of the people back then, that is such an amazing key. Or such an amazing resource for your classroom. So interpersonal intelligence. Intrapersonal people are contemplative. I don't know how to say that word. Contemplative, yeah, that sounds better. Reflective, right? They're the people that like to read stuff and think on their own and like to process things by themselves. They know how to access their own feelings. They might be really bad at understanding other people, but they understand themselves pretty well. So their own feelings, they'll get it pretty well. They learn through quietness. And another interesting thing about intrapersonal versus interpersonal is that, intrapersonal, they do love to share in groups, but they like to share their own thoughts. They don't care about what you say. They just want to share their own thoughts, because for them it's like thinking out loud, right? And so we have a lot of those in our classrooms. You ask them to talk, or you ask a question and they just keep talking. They just keep talking. It's not because they're interpersonal. It's because they're intrapersonal, because they need to, somehow process their own mind. And so they keep talking. And then you're like, oh, this is good sharing. This is going well. But then you realize, oh, but nobody else can say anything. It's like he's just talking about his own stuff, right? The best example of this is that let's say you have a sharing, and let's say she's interpersonal, he's intrapersonal, and she's interpersonal. And so she'll say something, blah, 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 blah. And so she'll say something, blah, and it follows up her thing, because they're social learners. And then this guy will, because he's intra, he'll say something, but it's totally different from them. And it totally breaks the train of thought. And then you're like, whoa, we were onto something good. Why do you start sharing about his shoes? Who cares about his shoes? Talk about how he felt, right? So we laugh, but we sort of know who are those people in our classrooms, in our Sunday school. I mean, you talk about something and then they come up with something else and you're like, what? Where did that come from? Intrapersonal, right? Naturalist. This is a kind of a newer development in Gardner's research. Newer, like last 10 years. Naturalists are like those who we usually like label outdoorsy, right? They like to go outdoors for classes. I mean, everybody likes to go outside for classes, but these are the people who like to go outdoors even when it's raining, even when it's cold, even when it's snowing. Like they don't care. They just want to be outside, right? They don't care what it is outside. They just like the outside.
Do you think we have people in this church like that?
Maybe. I'm pretty like that. Andrew Pack is like that. Good point.
Really?
Good call. Andrew Pack is totally like that.
If you do any activity
Outside, he'll just do it.
raining,
Yeah. I'm sure for Andrew Pack, you say like, no, pack. Yeah. Yeah.
Pang's the opposite.
Pang is totally the opposite. That's right.
He is unnatural.
The white.
The half.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then he works for a gaming company, so that's kind of that's so ironic.
Yeah, so he's always indoors. Yeah. So imagine if you have a naturalist in your class and you decide to teach about the Sermon on the Mount. Where's the best place you think to teach the Sermon on the Mount? Mount Royal, bingo! Right? Why do we spend like an entire like Sunday school class teaching about like the Sermon on the Mount when you have a mountain just like right next door? Right? Imagine teaching about Revelation, all those weird animals. Where's the best place to go with naturalists? Biodome, go to Insectarium, go to the zoo. Right? Go to those places. Outdoors.
Go to the Amazon.
Go to the Amazon. Right? So a common mistake, if we try to make sense of all those 8 multiple intelligences, all those MI, a common mistake is that we forget that all 8 actually function together. That's blank 19.
Form like Voltron.
What's that again?
They form like Voltron.
Voltron.
And cost the head.
They work together. Oftentimes we pit each other against, like we pit the the intels against each other. But it shouldn't be that way. They actually work together, right? So we shouldn't box in students. We shouldn't say like, well, I mean, he's only this way and we should only teach him this way. No, that's not right. We can use all the other ways to teach them, right? Stop singing to me all the time, right? So we need to be, we need to be bold. We need to be creative how we use different combinations, blank 20, different combinations of intelligence, right? Because they work together, and so it's just a matter of how do we combine them together. Combination. So, combo MI. So remember that, as well, there are many ways, as much as there are different MIs, there's also different ways to reach out to somebody of one single MI, right? Let's say for musical, yes, you can sing songs, but you can also have them songwriting. You can have them listen to somebody else's song, like whatever it is. Yeah.
If you as a teacher are more inclined in one or two of these MIs,
Yeah.
should you
Only use
force
those?
yourself to go into the other MIs
Yes.
to teach?
Yeah, because you have it.
Totally out of your element.
Because we have all 8. But you can appreciate music, right? So for example, somebody who's like you might not be able to rap, but you might be able to, I don't know, like play music, right? Huh?
That's a talent.
Well, you're okay, right? Right? Sorry, you had a question? Somebody had to raise hand. Okay. So there's multiple ways. There's multiple ways to reach within the same intelligence. For example, right? Somebody who has trouble reading doesn't mean that he has weak linguistics, right? Because somebody who has trouble reading might actually be a strong linguistic in the way that he can tell a very, very good story very well, right? Some people have trouble reading, but when you ask them to, hey, can you tell a story? They'll be really good at telling jokes, and they'll be really good at like retelling past stories and stuff like that, or like past events. So there's many ways that each intelligence can come up or surface or be expressed, right? As a bonus, kind of going to this now, class management and distractions. Too bad. As a bonus, right, if you're able to tap into multiple intelligence, you will also be able to manage disruptive students. Meaning, the very fidgety, can't sit still, need to like tap at something, need to move around student that is disruptive and you need to discipline and it's super hard to manage, most probably what they do right then is their strength, is their strongest intelligence. So if you can pinpoint that, you can say, okay, he's like that, I'm going to use a bodily kinesthetic intelligence or tool or experience for that guy or that person to be able to learn. But also as a bonus, he's going to stop being disruptive, or he's going to stop being distracted or distracting others because you've been able to tap into how he's built, right? So that's a bonus of being able to map the multiple intelligences in your classroom. But for example, like we've always had like people in the classroom that can't sit still, right? They keep standing up, or they go out and they come back, or they walk around the hallway, or they go like that, or they keep shaking. So the way that they're disruptive will usually reflect their strongest or reflect the strength in that multiple intelligence. So if we know that, because sometimes we can't tell just by looking at somebody, okay, you're strong in musical or you're strong in something else, right? If the guy keeps humming the entire class, or keep like with the headphones the entire class, or keeps like, drumming a beat or, something like that, then maybe he's like musically intelligent. And so knowing that, then that could be a cue to you to say, okay, he's disruptive this way. How can I turn it into something positive? How can I turn it into a learning experience using bodily kinesthetic, using music, whatever that disruptive behavior is? Because oftentimes our reaction in this part of the world to disruptive behavior is to punish them. And so we tell them it's wrong to sing. It's wrong to move around. But we never tell them, okay, that's a good way to learn. Why don't we try to work where you are and use that as a learning experience? And right. But the point is that, the thing is that we have to remember always, right? The base is what? The foundation is that everybody has all 8 intelligences, right? And so when you come to prepare a class, when you use the Hokbook Luktuk, how are you going to put a variety of exercise? How are you going to put a variety of teaching experiences to use all 8 intelligences? Because right now, pretty much usually we only use one, which is logic, or 1 or 2, like the mathematical one and the linguistic. Well, even that we'll rarely do, right? Usually.
Share.
Yeah, but.
Interpersonal.
We do interpersonal, but usually it'll be questions aimed at people to answer back and not to share with each other, right? Usually the direction of the thing will be like this, you guys and me, but it'll rarely be like this, right? You look at current classrooms. How are classrooms set up nowadays in classes? It's rows, right? Students never see each other. So obviously those who are like interpersonal learner, they will always turn around and talk to their neighbors because they need to learn. They don't want to talk to you, they want to talk to their neighbors because that's how they learn. But then when they turn around and talk to their neighbors, people slap them and say, like, don't talk to your neighbor. But inside of them, they're yelling and they're saying, I'm an interpersonal learner, I need to talk to people. And so people start doing what in the classroom? They start putting them 4 by 4, right? They took 4 pews and put them facing each other. And so you have little islands of little students, right? And that works in many cases. But still, you go to university, and university is supposed to be a place of learning. But how are the classes set up? How do you maximize seating area in the classroom? You put them in pews again. You put them in rows.
It could be a cost saving, but.
But also, right? Like you try to fit as many people in the smaller area. I mean, there's a lot that comes into play. But if you want to make university a learning place, there's got to be a balance somewhere. But there's no balance at all, it seems, in many cases. Yeah. we all know what people do in labs. They don't go.
Speak for yourself.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I found, like, for us here, our Sunday schools, we have it here, in this room, and in the other room.
Yeah.
When I had it here, there were no tables.
Yeah.
We sat in a semicircle.
Yeah.
And there seemed to be more interaction. When I sit
sure.
in the class over there around the tables,
Yeah, I always feel this one is so much better.
it's less interaction and
Yeah.
more
I agree.
one way.
That's because more people are going in and out from there too. That's traffic.
Yes.
Distracting.
But yeah, every Sunday school I've been here has always been better
And
than
the
that
and
one.
the,
I agree.
and the acoustics here is better because it's more intimate.
Closed.
Yeah.
So that one should be like a dance hall.
Yeah.
Kinesio.
And by that logic,
Yeah.
Ryan should be good at dance. He's like,
From now on, Ryan, you teach
Ryan
all-
should be
every
teaching
single class.
Breakout floor.
How many laws are there in the Bible? Shake your hands.
But not too high, because the stairway is.
I hope it answers your question before, like the original question, Dickie, about how, like, why you didn't see the connection, or.
I saw it more as, okay, there's a person who's, let's say, likes attention.
Okay.
So that person talks a lot, and
Yeah.
Now how do I work to that strength without him continuing to talk
Right.
throughout the whole class?
Yeah.
So yeah, I could ask him specific questions and then change the intelligence to someone else's strength. And
Yeah. So if he talks a lot, it might be many things, right? He might be a really strong linguistic, so he needs to use words and like he needs to express himself using words and syntax. It might be like a case of interpersonal, he just needs to share with people. It might be a case of intrapersonal. And so depending on what it is, then you need to use those strengths. So for example, if it's because he's very strong linguistically, then every passage you need to read, everything that needs to be said, but you don't need to say it necessarily, make that guy do it. Print him an extra outline of the Sunday school class and say, you know what, I'll mark where you speak, and let him speak. You know, if he has that need to express himself,
Maybe you should teach.
yeah, or maybe have him teach, right? If he's interpersonal, and I think a lot of people are interpersonal, have more like sharing time where people can like go in small group. One of the things that I did with Andrew when he had his class, because he said like his class on Acts. So it's such a big class. You see, what am I doing? I said, why don't you break off in groups every single class? At the end, like just break off into a group of 3, like 4 or 5, and those that really need to talk, then they can talk then, right? So those are ways to manage. Divide and conquer, it always works. If he's intrapersonal and he always talks, then it might be a case that you need to go and talk to him one-on-one after and say, you know what, like, let other people talk. And usually they're aware enough, because they're intrapersonal, they know themselves. They're aware enough usually to say, oh, yeah, I do talk a lot. And so so it's something for them to learn. In terms of turning into a learning experience, you could like include them in your Sunday school prep or make them Bible study leaders, right? If you like to think this much, then why don't you prepare it, you know? So, yeah.
But there was there were 2 different types of Sunday schools. Like one was teaching, one was the book type, like the self-directed, the book one where everyone had to read the book.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, sorry, yeah.
Like I found that was good because there was, I think Kanan, what was his name? Keegan?
Who?
We did
Keegan.
Keegan.
Oh, Keegan.
That was like a really good classroom because he was
Reason for
sharing
God.
Reason for God. Because
Yeah.
he was sharing like a lot. Like because I felt like he was very interpersonal.
Yeah,
interpersonal.
totally. Absolutely.
The other classes were quiet.
It was harder for him to fit in.
But I think that was good. There was like 2 different groups, like those who like are more receptive, like who like to hear more from teachers, and then the other class was more for people who like to share their own.
Yeah. I think when we did those classes, like the self-directed and the traditional one, I definitely think that we reached more people that way, or people got more from Sunday school that way.